Sir Walter Scott was very well known in his day and widely read all over the world, but nowadays very few British people read his works, which are best known for their film versions. Unlike his contemporary, and to some extent rival, Jane Austen, his novels have lost in popularity, mostly due to the fact that his stories are very historically specific and narrate episodes that few are now interested in. His prose is also rather dense and heavy, overwordy, and often devoid of punctuation, and thus not easy for the modern reader. Scott was born in Edinburgh in 1771 to professional parents, but despite their good social position, the street in which they lived was rather small and dark, and this had a negative effect on the health of Walter and his siblings, 6 of whom died in infancy. He himself suffered from polio that left him lame for the rest of his life. In an attempt to improve his health, he was sent to live with his grandparents and aunt on the Scottish borders, and it was here that he first encountered traditional Scottish literature, which was to influence his own literary career. Just like the other English Romantic poets, Scott was fascinated by the oral traditions of literature and the folk tales and stories still told by the people living in the area. This, in turn, led him to an interest in Scottish history. At first, Scott was best known for his poetry, such as The Lady of the Lake, and he considered the novel as an inferior genre. For this reason, his first novels were published anonymously. His most important works, such as Waverley, were centred on the historical events that took place in Scotland in the 18th century, when bonny Prince Charlie fought to take the English throne and thus to restore it to the Stuart line. Subsequent novels became collectively known as the Waverley novels. One of these, Ivanhoe, his best-known work, dealt with a different historical period. This novel was written in 3 volumes and this time was set in England in the Middle Ages. The story is one of knights and chivalry, of witches and outlaws. This was a period in English history when there was still a certain amount of friction between the newly arrived Normans and the old Anglo-Saxon population, and the plot revolves around the life of Wilfred of Ivanhoe, who was disinherited by his Saxon father for supporting the Norman king Richard the Lionheart. Having fought with Richard in the Crusades, and after several acts of heroism, Ivanhoe eventually makes peace with his father. This novel is partly responsible for modern perceptions of bad King John and Robin Hood, both of whom appear in the work. Scott's main claim to fame that he was able to show that history is not merely a list of political events, but the product of human decisions. He used a blend of figurative language and dialect to give life to his characters, both real and fictitious, and from all social classes. Walter Scott was an important influence on other European novelists, and in Italy, in particular on Alessandro Manzoni. Both writers set their novels in specific historical periods and mixed real historical facts with fictional characters and events. Interestingly, and perhaps coincidentally, both Scott and Manzoni published a novel called The Betrothed, or I Promessi Sposi. However, today, Scott's greatest legacy is that he created Scotland's identity. Once known as the magician of the North, it is thanks to his works that Scottish culture has become famous all over the world. The majestic landscapes, the dark lochs, the kilts, tartans and shortbreads were all brought to international attention through his novels. Indeed, it is probable that the kilts and bagpipes that so represent the country would not be seen to the extent that they are had it not been for him.